In this video, I'm going to give you the exact framework I use to use exercise rotations to our advantage to get bigger, stronger, never get aches and pains, and never get injured. What do all the strongest guys in the world have in common? Exercise rotation. We're talking all the elite level powerlifters, strongmen, athletes. They all have one thing in common, and that is exercise rotation. Because if you want to stay in it the long game, don't get me wrong, there are some exceptions. There's some people that just do barbell squatting, they don't touch an SSB, just do flat benching, they don't touch an incline. But they are the exceptions. And most of the time, if we look further afield, if we look into the not so distant future, they're running into all sorts of injuries, aches and pains. And this is because of a couple things. One of those things is accommodation. Another one of those things is repetitive strain. And unfortunately, you can't outrun this, because in the same way that if you've ever done a manual handling course in your life, they'll tell you not to lift a box up and down over and over in the same position, because you will get a repetitive strain. The same way tennis players get tennis elbow, because they get a repetitive strain. The same way builders are notorious for having a bad back. This is because of repetitive strain and accommodation. What happens is, if I do the same lift over and over at the same intensity in the same position, I get a repetitive strain over time, because I'm doing too much of the same movement and taxing the same joint angles, ligaments and muscles in exactly the same places. But a simple adjustment to an exercise will make it less strenuous, and it will give you the ability to progress infinitely under the right circumstances. Let's first start off by me giving you a template. So here's a sample upper body day. As you can see, we're starting with incline bench press. Now, this is not a strength-based program. This is just more of a hypertrophy general purpose program. Okay, I'm not going to give you a specific program, because I lean more to the power building side of things, because you're training strength and you're training hypertrophy, so you get the best of both worlds, and then you can throw a little bit of cardio in there as well. But we'll just give you a general purpose, does a little bit of strength but leans more to hypertrophy. So the way we would do it is rotate the exercises every month. Or you could have an A and a B, or you could have an A, B and a C. If you're newer to lifting, you're in that sort of under 2 years mark, then I'd recommend just having an A and a B. Month A, we do incline bench. Month B, we do flat bench. Now, I would even suggest that you slightly change the grips. So maybe go for your conventional grip for incline, and then for flat bench, you go for a slightly closer grip. I'm not saying close grip, but slightly closer grip, just to tax the joint angles of the shoulder slightly different. You could weigh the intensities with that as well. For example, week 1, you could do 3 sets of 8 to 12. Week 2, you could go lower reps and do a 5x5, then back to 3x12, then back to 5x5. You could do that if you wanted to, or you could just keep the rep ranges the same. I wouldn't recommend that, but there's lots of ways to do that. I'd recommend the first example I've given, and then that gives you the best of both worlds. So month 1, you do your incline for 4 weeks. Month 2, you do your flat bench, and then you go back and forth between the two and manage the intensities. Now, it's as simple as that. Then you do the same with all the other exercises. There are some exceptions to this. For example, a tricep pushdown is not very taxing. So it's unlikely that you're going to get a repetitive strain from a tricep pushdown. However, it's not going to hurt you by changing the handle that you use when you do the tricep pushdown. I did a post the other day about the bro split. People constantly stab at the bro split and say it's a terrible split, it doesn't work, etc, etc. I would completely disagree. All splits work in their own way if they're periodized right. So let's take the bro split for example and use this exercise rotation for that. Do I think that's the best split? Do I think any split is the best split? No. But if you wanted to do a bro split, there is definitely ways to do it. So with your bro split, you could do the same. Month 1, you do incline dumbbells. Month 2, you do flat dumbbells, and you push the intensity. And I promise you, you still will progress just as much as you would other splits. Would I use it more for a strength-based split, someone trying to compete? No. But if you was leaning more towards bodybuilding, then Yeah, I probably would. So you can use the exercise rotations to push intensity and also to push stimulus. Would you rotate every week? No. But you could use that to your advantage. You could even go up to 8 weeks. I prefer the 4-week framework because in my opinion, that's where I've seen the most progress with myself and with clients. But that's where you could use a bro split to your advantage. Let's say you've got a back day. For 4 weeks, bent over row. For 4 weeks, easy bar, bent over row, underhand. And what you'll find is when you go back to the previous block A, again, you can do 3 blocks, so A, B, and C. If you're a bit more advanced, I'd do 3 blocks and then rotate back to A. Again, I'm going to put all examples on screen so you can really get the idea of this. So I don't want you to get too confused. And what you'll find is you don't lose any strength in the other exercises, yet you might have not done that exercise for 8 weeks because you're still training similar joint angles. It's just different enough so that you don't get repetitive strain and your body's getting a slightly different stimulus to continue to progress. Now I use the example of farmers. Farmers lift hay bales all day. They move around all day, they're digging, they're doing whatever, maybe not so much now because they've got a lot more machinery. They're digging, they're doing all this sort of stuff, all this manual labour. And you probably heard the term farmer strength. So I've trained farmers, they've come into the gym and they've pulled 180 off the floor first time, no training. That is because of something called GPP. So that's the transference from other exercises to that exercise. You don't have to do a specific exercise to be really strong at it, okay? And that is where exercise rotation comes in, and that's why it's so important. Don't think, oh, because I'm not doing exactly, let's take people who compete. Exactly, because I'm not doing comp bench, I won't get stronger at comp bench. That's not how it works. Yes, specificity is important, but you can use other exercises to your advantage to progress that movement. So injuries, I'm not going to be ignorant enough to say that exercise rotation is the only reason you're getting injured. Get comfortable. There could be plenty of other reasons why you're getting injured, but it's definitely a contributing factor. I've had people come to me over the years with a multitude of injuries that they've had or accumulated over their training life, especially if you're a little bit older, because this is when it becomes more of a problem. They've done maybe 6 months, a year with me, and most of their injuries have faded away. Now obviously there are permanent things that only really surgery will probably improve, plus rehabilitating exercises. However, exercise rotation treats the root cause of most of these problems. When you tend to get shoulder injuries, it tends to be repetitive strain. Painful hips, again, tends to be repetitive strain. Not so much with knee injuries and things like that. That's a little bit more complicated. There are other factors to that. But this is why I am so big on exercise rotation, and that's why I made something called the Built to Last framework, which is exactly what I've explained today. Common mistakes. So some of the most common mistakes with exercise rotation, varying the exercise too much. So that would be, for example, if you had back squats in your program and instead of back squats you did leg press. Although we're using similar muscles, it's a completely different exercise as far as joint angles. So when we back squat, it's first off, it's a free weight. So you obviously have to balance and stabilize the weight. Whereas a leg press is a fixed machine, so you've got a fixed range of movement. Whereas a back squat, obviously you have to stabilize. With the back squat, your lower back, glutes, your upper back are a lot more involved than a leg press. With a leg press, your lower back generally is not involved, your upper back's not involved, your arms are not involved. So we're completely changing the movement. So the short of that is don't change the movement, make sure it's similar. If you want to do back squat, then back squat for 4 weeks and SSB squat for 4 weeks. That will be enough to change the exercise, because first off, it changes where the weight is distributed, but also changes the joint angle. The second biggest mistake is not waiving the total volume. So although exercise rotations work, I'd still recommend every 4th week dropping the volume slightly so you can maintain the same intensity all year round. I don't believe in deloads. I think deloads are a pointless activity for most people. I think you need to just change the exercise intensity, or sometimes just take a week off training. I think that's a lot more effective than just doing a deload, doing a week where you go into the gym and basically do fuck all. Now I'm going to leave you with a list of rules to stick by for the Built to Last framework.